Welcome to another edition of Power Talks with Jay. Thank you so much for joining us and lending me your ears. Today's topic, we're going to talk about the 80-20 principle, one of my favorite tools in my toolkit. Richard Koch actually based this book on Wilfred Pareto principle. He discovered the lopsided relationship between input and output. 80% of what you achieve comes from 20% of time spent. It can help individuals and groups achieve much more with much less effort. I would like to change Richard's quote to, it can help individuals and groups achieve much more with much more effectiveness, which may result in less effort. And the reason why I did that is because sometimes we can fall into a false logic of doing less and achieving more, but sometimes in reality, we have to put in a lot of effort to get to that point. So he divides this into two applications. He talks about the 80-20 analysis and the 80-20 thinking. And I'm going to add a third one, 80-20 effectiveness. So let's go through all three of them briefly. This is a massive topic and one that needs a lot of attention, but I'm going to highlight as much as I can for you guys to get started. So 80-20 analysis. What is our most precious commodity? Time. So it's time to face reality, no pun intended. Where do you spend most of your time? Is it paperwork? Is it making phone calls? Is it servicing? Is it putting out fires? Sales, prospecting, marketing, products, cross-selling, referrals? The list goes on and on. So let's try to simplify this a little bit. Let's do a column. Let's do columns. So column one, make a list of everything you do for your business. Then to coincide with that, start marking in your calendars exactly what you do on a daily basis. It's a really eye-opening experience. Then in column two, at the end of each week, add up the hours you spend on each of those activities that you did. In column three, add up the hours spent on each of those activities you did for the month. Column four, now let's divide this up into input versus output. How many hours did you spend on prospecting, selling, or whatever task that you did for that month? You know, when you're talking about sales, which is probably the most important thing, did it generate revenue for you? Did you spend your time wisely? How many hours a day you worked daily, weekly, and monthly? Once we have all of this, and it seems daunting at first, but once you get used to doing this, it becomes a lot easier. The first time may take some time and may take it takes a lot of effort, but I can't tell you the results are amazing because you will change the effectiveness. So the key here is to figure out two key causes, inputs and outputs. 20% of inputs that lead to 80% of outputs. That's all your achievements. 80% of inputs that lead to only 20% of the output are all your underperformers. Now, there's a small caveat that Richard points out in his book. Do not use the analysis in a linear thinking way, which means you have to be vigilant against false logic. And to do this, you have to revisit your 80-20 analysis on an ongoing basis by asking key questions which provide clear thinking on how the analysis is applied. Lastly, be selective and contrarian. Now, this caveat that he puts in there, I would highly recommend reading it in the book because he goes into it in some depth, and it's worth a read. But for today's purposes, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that there is a false logic that could prevail in your analysis. Now, let's talk about 80-20 thinking. Based on the information collected in your analysis, now begins the action plan of how to change your behaviors to create 20% of inputs that lead to 80% of outputs, or 20% of your focus on sales to lead to 80% of revenue, if that is your goal. You know that 80-20 thinking is working when it multiplies effectiveness. Actions should result in getting much more from much less. Now, on page 39 of his book, he has listed some conventional wisdom and turned them upside down. Now, we're not going to go through all of them, but I'd like to point out a few which will give you an alternative way of thinking. Number one, celebrate exceptional productivity rather than raise average efforts. Be selective, not exhaustive. Delegate or outsource as much as possible in your daily life. That's for professional as well as personal. Only do the thing we are best at doing and enjoy most. In every important sphere, work out where 20% of effort can lead to 80% of returns. And last, calm down, work less, and target a limited number of very valuable goals where the 80-20 principle will work for you, rather than pursuing every available opportunity. Now, he goes on to say, to become an 80-20 thinker requires an active participation and being creative on your part. I'd like to add two more things to that list, and that is consistency and awareness. Because without those two, if you just analyze and just think it without the consistency and awareness, it just doesn't seem to happen. For every step in your business process, ask yourself if it adds value or provides essential support. Are we bridging the gap? Are you discovering opportunities where there are irregularities? These are the things that we have to keep in mind when we're doing the thinking. Now, the third one, 80-20 effectiveness. And this is something that it was important to me when I went through this process. To do the analysis and thinking for the 80-20 principle is also just as important to measure your effectiveness, because you can duplicate these efforts in another area that you need some improving. So measuring with KPIs, which are key performance indicators, is a great tool to use. On a personal note, I think it is extremely important to do all three analysis, thinking, and effectiveness on an ongoing basis for each category of your business. And you can do one for your sales, one for your product, one for referrals, one for marketing, prospecting, and so on and so on. This will also prevent from getting caught in that linear thinking that we talked about earlier. Now, this book has some incredible golden nuggets that you can take and use in your business almost immediately. And we can indulge in this topic for a full day. But since we don't have that time, I would like to leave you with something that he talks about on page 107 and 195. Now, on 107, he talks about 4 steps to lock in your core customers. So just briefly, I would like to go over them because I find that this is incredibly important and it has helped me in my own business and in my own practice. Number 1, you cannot target the key 20% until you know who they are. Really get to know who your 20% of your core customers are. Number 2, provide exceptional, outrageous service to these 20% of your core clients. Number 3, target new products and services at the core 20% of your clients, creating it solely for this group. And he says, and I quote, innovation should be grounded in the relationship with this group. And this is probably the most powerful statement and something that I have used, and it has been extremely successful. And I'll repeat that again. Target new products and services at the core 20% of your clients, creating it for solely this group. And innovation should be grounded in the relationship with this group. Number 4, aim to keep your core customers forever because customer loyalty drives profitability. And lastly, I would like to talk about the 10 golden rules for career success that he talks about. Specialize in very small niche development core skills. Choose a niche that you enjoy where you can excel and stand a chance, excuse me, of becoming an acknowledged leader. Realize that knowledge is power. Identify your market and your core customers and serve them best. Identify where 20% of effort gives 80% of returns. Learn from the best. Become self-employed early in your career. Employ as many net value creators as possible. Use outside contractors for everything but your core skills. Exploit capital leverage. These 10 golden rules have served me very well. But the key that I found was that I had to go back and constantly revisit these rules, and especially those four key contributors for your core customers. This is a practice that I've done on an ongoing basis. Like I said in my last Power Talk, I like to do it on a monthly basis, then quarterly. And once you have a system in place, it's a good idea to do this every 6 months and at your year end. It's such an incredible exercise that you will benefit from, because you will achieve so much more with less effort, but with more effectiveness. Now, I highly recommend, if you are going to pick this book up and read it, the 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch, I recommend reading the preface first, the last chapter second, because in that last chapter, he covers what his critics would say, especially on the book reviews on Amazon. He actually addresses them. And I think it's very important to know those up front and then start reading the book. And this is the one book that I actually skipped around because there were things that were far more urgent for me at that moment. So I actually went in and skipped around, and it is okay because he covers each chapter as an independent chapter, even though there's a line that goes through it. And if you're one of those that would love to read it from, cover to cover, that's great. But I still recommend reading the last chapter first, because it will really set the tone for you. I really, really do appreciate your time for these first 15 minutes. And I hope that you will revisit this talk on our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. I wish you the best of luck on your 80-20 principle.